Hi, my name is David Bergvinson, and for the September 14th, 2021 edition of the World Weather Watcher, we're going to be looking at the impacts of climate around the world, but especially zooming in to Tropical Storm Nicholas in Texas. We're going to be looking at aflatoxin in the corn harvest of the Midwest, as well as looking at the impact of rainfall across West Africa and what it means for farmers there. So looking at the news, we see that about 4% of the corn crop was harvested this past weekend. That's well over 5% now. And with it, we need to keep track of the conditions for the harvested grain to make sure that the quality of that grain is preserved. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in detail later. We're also going to learn about the Rossby wave and the impact of our jet stream in bringing down cold weather far further south than normal. And so we're going to see that in the case of western part of Canada and also Russia and the eastern countries of the European Union. And we'll also talk a little bit about Tropical Storm Nicholas and the impact that that's having, especially in coastal areas of Texas. So looking at the last 30 days, we see that for the Corn Belt of the United States, that rainfall was a little bit below normal, while it was a little bit above normal for much of Mexico, Central America, and the northern part of South America. Good rainfall across West Africa, so this is wonderful news for rain-fed agriculture there. A little bit of heterogeneous rainfall, a little bit of below normal for central parts of India. In some of the central states, a little bit above normal, but on the whole, a little below normal there, but still sufficient for agriculture. A little below normal for Southeast Asia. That trend continues, but again, still sufficient to support agriculture. Looking to the forecast for the next 15 days, we see that drier than normal conditions for the Corn Belt of the United States as we head into harvest season. That's good for harvesting that grain when in dry condition before it goes into storage. We see good rains, though, in the forecast for central part of Mexico. A little bit drier conditions, though, for South America, and a little bit drier than normal starting to emerge for Western Africa, as well as other parts of Africa. Drier than normal conditions continue in the forecast for the southern part of India. A little bit above normal, though, for the central part of India over the next 15 days, and drier than normal conditions through most of Europe. When we zoom into Texas, we can have a look at the projected impact Tropical Storm Nicholas is going to have on the coastal areas of Texas here, where if we look at the weekly rainfall over the course of this summer, and then the long-term normal shown in the gold line here, we see that for the next week, rainfall is going to be roughly 3 times the normal of around 70 millimeters. We're going to see approximately 200 millimeters fall in the course of the week, leading to the potential risk of flooding, and therefore the need for this kind of data and analytics to help us understand rainfall variability and how it's going to impact our urban centers and how we can adapt to the excessive runoff that will result. Our infrastructure right now is not prepared to handle that, and so we really need to rethink our drainage systems, especially in urban centers. When we look to maximum temperature the last 30 days, we see that it's been warmer than normal for the central part of the United States extending up into the eastern provinces of Canada, warmer than normal for the southern part of Brazil and Argentina, warmer than normal for much of Africa, with the exception of Ethiopia, and a little cooler than normal for the European states, except for Spain and Italy, and a little warmer than normal for the central part of Russia and Kazakhstan. Looking to the forecast, the next 15 days, we see this impact of the Rossby wave that is a big dip in our jet stream that brings down that cold weather far further south than normal for this time of year. And so we see that impact the western provinces of Canada. We also see it impacting Russia and Kazakhstan, as well as Ukraine. And we can see then, by comparison, much warmer than normal conditions for the central part of Europe. So this is just an impact of our jet stream slowing down, and with it, creating these big loops and bringing down that cold weather with it. When we look to precipitation in the next 15 days, we see dry conditions for the southwestern states of the U.S., but we see wet conditions for central part of Mexico all the way down through the northern part of South America. Good rains across most of West Africa, as well as the central part of India and Southeast Asia. Looking at the ratio of precipitation to potential evapotranspiration, an index that helps us in rain-fed agriculture situations understand when crops are under stress. Areas that would be under stress are indicated in red. Areas that have suitable moisture for the temperature are indicated in green. And so that we see that for the western states, of course, rain-fed agriculture is stressed and therefore requires irrigation. But we see for Mexico, conditions have been good the last 30 days for agriculture, as has been the case for Western Africa, all the way through to the middle part of Ethiopia. Good conditions for most of India, as we've been talking about, as well as for Southeast Asia, despite the fact that the rains have been below normal. And we see drier conditions, though, for the central part of Europe as those crops enter into harvest season. Looking to the next 15 days, we see the drying trend of our weather through the central part of the United States extending up into the Corn Belt. So, but this is okay as we head into harvest season. It's actually a good thing for farmers. We see moist conditions, though, through most of Mexico, all the way down to the northern part of South America. Good moisture across West Africa to support agriculture. Same is true for most of India, with the exception of the southern states in India. Same is true for Southeast Asia, with good growing conditions there, as well as good growing conditions for much of the central part of Russia. What we've done at AWARE is to take FAO's agroecological zones and convert them into a dynamic index that allows us to track in real time food security. And we've broken the crop production down into 4 zones: arid, marginal, suitable, and humid, based on the long-term normal temperature and rainfall patterns. When those patterns deviate significantly from normal, we then can issue an alert that gives countries and companies and farmers advance notice to start taking precautionary action to mitigate the risk of a crop failure. So when we look at the last 30 days, we can see, based on this index, good growing conditions across Mexico all the way down to the northern part of South America. Good growing conditions across most of West Africa, but we'll zoom into some areas that are challenged. Good growing conditions for most of India, with the exception of the southern part of India. Same is true for the northwestern part of Southeast Asia. Looking to the next 15 days with this index, we see that the drying conditions extending beyond the southern part of Canada into the Corn Belt of the United States. Drying conditions in the northern part of Brazil. Also dry conditions in places like the northern part of Ghana, and also the southern part of India. So we're going to have a little zoom in to the western part of Africa, where we can see these areas in red indicating drier than normal conditions for normally what should be a good part of the production season. And so we're issuing a little warning here for northern Mali and Burkina Faso as a result. For the next 2 weeks, we see a warning emerging for Ghana over to the southern part of Burkina Faso. And for the rest of West Africa, though, we see very good growing conditions, both for the past 30 days and also for the next 15 days. When we use this index and apply it to the Corn Belt of the United States, we see that conditions have been slightly drier, and therefore the concern of slight drop in yield for Iowa and the northern part of Illinois. But when we look to the forecast, we see much drier than normal conditions and the potential risk for that dent corn filling up the southern part of Wisconsin. And so just something to be watching there. As we get into harvest time, though, we're also keeping track of the impact of weather on important diseases like Aspergillus flavus. That it's a mold that attacks corn, and especially when the corn crop has been stressed by drought during the growing season, and then it experiences a lot of rain at the time of harvest. This poses a very high risk to mold development, and with it, the production of carcinogenic compounds. And so we have to be very careful for areas that have high risk of aspergillus. And so we see that's the case for the southern part of Minnesota, for example, right here. And so as farmers and grain aggregators are bringing in the harvest, extra attention needs to be paid to these areas here, the southern Wisconsin, for example, and Minnesota, where we could see high levels of aflatoxin. They're not going to be as bad as the aflatoxin levels we saw in 2012 and 17. Nonetheless, we have to keep track of it, especially for Minnesota. If analytics like this are of interest to you, I invite you to go to our adapter platform at apps.aware.com, where you can start your weather analytics journey for free. Until next week, take care.